Welcome back to the world's worst fishing, everybody. I'm Chris Jones, and coming at you again from the Land is the Limit shop today. And as I mentioned in my previous video, I don't know if you watched it or not, but in case you did, that I was going to do a video about laminates. So today's video is going to be your guide to laminates. I'm going to go over at least my knowledge about laminates and what I think you need to know in order to achieve the best laminates possible that we can do. And so that's what today's video is going to be. It's going to be all about laminates. So let's lock and load. Okay, everybody. Again, thanks for tuning in today. And laminates starts with the twin injector, at least in the injection world. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the twin injector. Mine is pretty old. I think there are some newer models out that are a little bit easier to use than this one, but this is the one that I have. This is like the old school bass tackle twin injector. So it's a fairly simple piece of equipment. It is literally two injectors. It's two single injectors that are joined by this bar. You can actually take it apart and use them as single injectors if you want to do solids. And it's pretty much that simple. One thing you'll want to make sure is that your twin injector is nice and cleaned out. You get a lot of plastic leftover debris in there, and that's just bad for business. So the way that I like to clean it, I like to take a little bit of worm oil. Actually, there's not much left in this one. And I like to put some worm oil into both tubes. And I have a little brush here, and I literally just like to brush out the inside of the pipes, and that plus the oil really kind of clears the way, and so it's much smoother. And because one thing you want to make sure is that you're drawing the plastic up evenly, that both sides are getting the equal amount of plastic. And a lot of that, you have to make sure that your cups are full enough, but we'll get there in a minute. But first step is to do a little bit of injector maintenance, and these rods get a little nasty as well, so it's a good idea to clean those off. But step one is to clean the injector. And then in the final part of the injection process is this blending block. And again, for some of you, this is really basic knowledge, but I want this video to be educational for some of the new people that we have in the community. So if you are new to plastics, welcome. You're going to have a good time, I think. So this is the blending block, and it really is that simple, guys. It's color A, color B, and they meet in the middle, just like the Diamond Rio song, "We meet in the middle." So anyway, you want to make sure that this is cleaned out best to your ability, and that will ensure a good flow of plastic, and that is literally how it's done. Alright, so now with a little bit of information about the injector that you'll need out of the way, I wanted to talk about the three things that I think affect how your laminate comes out the most. Number one is the actual type of plastic. So you have two types of plastic. Well, you have way more than two types of plastic. Let me be clear there. But in general, you have standard colorant plastic, where you're only using liquid colorant, and then you have your powders. You have a pearl or a highlight powder, and when you try to marry the two together in a laminate, those can be tricky because the plastic with the powder is going to flow differently than the plastic with just the regular colorant. So that's number one. Number two is the actual mold. Is your mold symmetrical? And that has a lot to do with how well a mold laminates. If I take my punch bug, for example, the sides are exactly equal. Okay, so the plastic literally comes in here, it comes down the sprue, and it has two equal halves. This mold naturally is going to laminate better than, let's say, my boom shad. So if we look at the boom shad here, swim baits in general usually aren't perfectly symmetrical, especially if they have, a big tail on them or something. They're not perfectly even on either side. So if we look at part of the boom shad here, plastic comes in the sprue. We kind of have this awkward little bend here, right? Which gives the bait a lot of movement. But if I look at the port, it might look like it's completely symmetrical, but it's not. And then a lot of it is the actual port. So this port is really small. You can see that the plastic really gets funneled down really narrow. That is going to laminate. That's going to be harder to laminate. Sorry, I'm getting a little tongue-tied here. But a lot of how your laminates come out really depends on, I think, the mold layout, and of course the port size. The bigger the port size, the freer the plastic is going to go. If I have color A on this side, color B on this side, they have to get really squeezed down and then enter the bait cavity and then somehow be equal again. So this bait does not laminate as well as, I can't get it apart, as a bait of equal, everything about this is symmetrical. And this one not so much, especially the tail. And you can see the port size is a lot larger on the punch bug. And then variable number 3 is temperature. Temperature is the most important part of laminating. I don't care if you're trying to blend perfectly clear plastic with no color, and then you have white pearl loaded up with salt. You have one side that's pearl and salt, then the other side with absolutely nothing. It's not going to work if the temperatures are not correct. So the best investment you can make is just a little temperature gun. And this is your key to success in soft plastics. And the biggest thing to remember is that the temperatures need to be equal. They need to be like plus or minus 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and also lower temperatures. So if I normally shoot at 340, I want to try to shoot my laminates as cold as possible. If you think about it, the less runny the plastic is, right, it's not going to free flow as much, so it has less of a chance to mix. If both sides are a little bit thicker, when they enter the bait cavity, they have less viscosity to get out of balance. That's the best way to put it. So even temperatures and low temperatures, I think, are absolutely the most important. That's more important than your mold, than one plastic being different than another. If your temperatures are off, none of it's going to work. Okay, so I have some plastic heating up in the microwave. I'm just going to, I'm basically going to be using some remelts today for today's demonstration. But the next thing that you'll need to be aware of is the layout of the mold. So for example, this is the top side of, this is the bottom, I can't even talk today, guys. It's been a long week. This is the bottom of this bait. This is the top side. So I have to know, okay, this side has the top, this side has the bottom. So whenever I clamp this mold shut, I have to know that if it's facing that way, and it's really smart to just take a Sharpie and label top, bottom. I just, for whatever reason, I'm stupid and don't do that. So when I put my blending block on there, if I do it this way, it's not going to laminate at all. That's like going the wrong direction. You need it kind of perpendicular, I guess, with the top color on this side, the bottom color on this side. And that can change. I mean, obviously that's different for every mold, guys. If we look at the way that my boom shad is laid out, so it's completely like opposite. the top is on this side, but it's going a different direction. It's kind of hard to explain. And so whenever I put this mold together, it's a top injection. So instead of doing perpendicular like the worm, I have to do it parallel. But I have to know that with the screws, for example, because the screws go on that side, well, I guess you can call those screws. With those facing me, the top goes on the right, the bottom goes on the left. I'm not doing it that way, which is how most molds are. The new creature bait, it's a perfectly symmetrical bait. It really doesn't matter what side I do what. However, I just have to know that it's laid out this way, not that way. Okay, so I have some remelted stuff here. This over here is Seminole Gold. That's actually like a solid color that I make. And then this is, don't even know what you call that, but it's loaded with salt and copper pearl powder. So we kind of have two different worlds of plastic here, and they are really hot right now. Let's see what we have. We have 370. Ooh, 377 actually, to be precise. And then we have 374. Okay, so this is actually a good example. Our temperatures are close together, but they're super hot. So let's see if, even though they're even, let's see if shooting hot creates a laminate as good as shooting them low. So we'll shoot them hot right now. We'll do a couple baits hot, and then we'll get them back even again, but we'll do it low, like 330, and then we'll see what happens. And just for demonstration purposes, here is what the plastic looks like inside the blending block. Color A, color B. That's all there is to it. Okay, so those actually did really well. There's a little bit of unevenness down here. If you look at the two tails, you can kind of tell one got a lot more of the orange and one got a lot more of the Seminole Gold. And again, you know, it's that could be the small ports in this mold, and it could just be the general unevenness of the two types of plastic. But as you can see, even if you're making it difficult, like I tried to do, I tried to shoot hot and I tried to shoot two completely different mixtures of plastic. As long as your temperatures are fairly even, you can still get a good result. However, that is nowhere near a perfect laminate, and hopefully I can kind of prove, yeah, it didn't do so well up here in the nose, but hopefully I can kind of prove my theory correct, and we can get a little bit better result shooting them colder. But we're going to go ahead and look at the next couple baits. Okay, so here's the sprue from the trick worms, and any sort of straight worm usually laminates really well. The plastic goes in and it only has to go straight. It's not interrupted by any curves or turns. There's no big appendage, there's no little appendages. I don't know if that's coming through, but we did get some bleed over from the pearl, but in general you can see that did a nice even laminate. And if we look at the actual worms, you can see that they did a really good job laminating, and a lot of that I think is the layout of this mold. These laminated way better than the boom shads in my opinion, and I think a lot of it is the fact that the ports are bigger and it's literally just a straight bait. Okay, the grass grenade, this is actually my first time laminating this new mold. You can see that sprue is almost a perfect laminate. There's a little bit of bleed over. You can see some of the orange pearl that bled over in a few spots, but that is really good stuff right there. So let's take a look at the actual baits. We can see a fairly even laminate. We have a little bit of spillover, but you know, in a way that kind of gives laminates kind of some character. That right there is really well done. You can see that part of the bait laminates really well, and as a whole I think this did really good. Let's look at this other one here. That one is just about perfect, folks. You really can't ask for better than that. making baits in your garage. This one had a little bit of spillover here, but again, not bad. We can see a really good laminate on that side, but this side, that's just kind of more orange in general. Now, you know, I'm nitpicking a little bit here, but this video, you know, I'm trying to, you know, explain how to get the perfect laminate, which I don't even know if there is such a thing, but you can get really good results with the equipment that we have. So we're going to go ahead and shoot all of these again, but we're going to shoot them a little colder and see if that in general does better, particularly in the mold that's a little bit more temperamental. Okay, now we're going to shoot some baits again, but these are much colder. They're in the 330 range, and let's see what we can do. Okay, here are the cold boom shads, and you can see it is a better laminate. It is more, let me get some, try to get some better lighting on these things, guys. There's more of a defined line, and it goes all the way through the bait. Both tails, the tails are even, and if we look up here in the nose, it's just a better defined line on both sides. It's just a much more even laminate. Let's go get one of the other ones. Hold on. Okay, so here's one of the new ones, and then here's one of the first ones, and both are going to catch the same fish. The fish doesn't care, but this is just for purposes to show you that lower temperatures, you can really tell in the nose, and the hot ones, because the plastic is hotter, it has to cool more, which means it shrinks in more, so you can see this big dent in the nose. The colder plastic did not do that, but you can see how much better of a laminate the new one is. Let's take a look at the trick worms here. Ooh, man, what went wrong there? You can see this big streak of the orange, which doesn't bode well for my theory here. But if we look at the baits, that's actually a really nice laminate. And again, a straight worm like that is always going to laminate a little better, in my opinion anyway. There again, I was kind of running out of plastic, so it just could be unequal pressure. If I'm running out of plastic maybe on one side more than another, you're not going to get exact even amounts in there. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But that's actually really good. That worm right there came out perfect. That is a perfect laminate. But I think the difference was a little bit more apparent in the boom shad. Let's go ahead and see if any of the grenades turned out. Yeah, that didn't work, but hey, look how perfect the laminate is. Okay, so far we've talked about what makes a good laminate, a little bit about how molds can determine your laminates, temperatures, keeping a proper clean injector. So now I'm going to show you how to mess up some laminates. Okay, so I heated up some more remelts. This is like a white pearl with salt. This is just a regular blue with no salt. This one is in the 340s. This one is in the 370s. So here we go. We'll do the blue top side, and we'll see if these turn out. Okay, let's see how these did. So these are the punch bugs, and that mold is really laminate friendly. With that said, you can see that side did really well. I mean, that is absolutely a very defined line. But then this side, not so much. There's really not a very defined line, and a lot of silver bled over. This one over here, that side did really well. This side, there again, not so much. We have a lot of silver bleed up on this side. Let's see, where else? There was, yeah, right here in kind of the face, we have some silver bleed over. And all in all, though, these are still good laminates, and a lot of that is the mold. and just experience. I'm not tooting my horn, but I've done this a lot, and the more you inject a laminate, the more you get a feel for the injectors. That really does make a difference somehow, some way. I don't really know why. Let's look at the creatures, or the grenades. So this is a really well-made mold. A little bit of spillover here. There's really no defined line there. There is on that side. That's not, that's not bad, but it's also not great. We have a lot of silver bleed over in here. It's just hard to see. And then you can see a lot of blue bleed over on that side. So even molds that are really laminate friendly can hurt whenever doing it wrong. And then we'll get to a mold that is not super laminate friendly. There are all kind of problems with that right there, folks. I mean, we have silver all up in the nose on the blue side. There's no really good defined line. The tail is a mess. Let's see, let's look at this one. This one got a lot of silver bleed. There's silver bleed up here in the bottom. There's really not much of a defined line. It's just kind of all over the place. Again, I still think that these look really cool. They'll catch fish, but temperature is everything, especially in a temperamental mold. If you look, hold on, I'll be right back, guys. This is the same mold, 20 minutes apart, and that's the difference that temperature makes. The worms, okay, so the worms actually did really well. Again, a lot of it is the mold. The mold can save you if it's a laminate friendly mold. And you can tell that there's not really a great defined line. There is on that side, but not on that side. So even a straight worm, which are the easiest molds in the world to laminate, uneven temperatures is really, can really mess things up. That right there is I wouldn't consider these good laminates, but they look okay. This one got more blue than anything. There's hardly any silver at all. So that's just kind of an example of even an experienced plastics person like myself, if the temperatures are off, the end result is ultimately going to be off. Well, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. I hope this has been educational, or if you're experienced, I hope it's at least been entertaining. But like I said, laminates are probably the steepest learning curve. I think it certainly took me the longest to achieve really good laminates, and I still don't get them right all the time. Even when I think I have my temperatures just dead on, sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes that could be, the overall temperature, even if they're too high. I think that can mess things up. Differences in the viscosity of the plastic is another, and then just some days you just have better days than others. It's just like anything else. It's just like on the drums, or if you play sports. Some days you're really feeling it, some days you're just not. So I think laminates are, I won't say they're like hard, but I think they're the most challenging thing. It took longer for me to learn how to really get my laminates really good than it did for me to develop good colors. And colors is never ending. You're never gonna stop coming up with new colors that just seem to just be the greatest thing ever. It's awesome when you get a new color and come up with something that's really solid, especially if other people like it and want it. That's a really great feeling. So I hope today's laminate video finds you well, and I hope it's been informative. If you have questions and or critiques, this is kind of a public forum, so shoot me some comments, let me know what you think. If I'm doing it wrong, let me know. If I'm doing a great job, please let me know. I'm kind of open to anything, but I think this will definitely help some people. I wish I had videos like some of these when I was starting. So that's kind of the point of what I'm doing, is to try to provide some education. I think the more educated people are, the more people will get into this, and I think that's ultimately a good thing. So shoot me a comment down below, let me know what you think, and that was hopefully everything you need to know about laminates, and we'll see you next time on the world's worst fishing.